So in this episode, I'm going to talk to you guys about some of the problems and some of the things that you should think about before you consider purchasing an electric vehicle. If you guys have been following me, I've been driving my Tesla Model 3 for just over a year now, and I absolutely love this car, but there are a few things that I'd like to change. That's not so much the subject of this video today. More to the point, in this video I want to talk to you about some of the reasons why you may not want to purchase an EV, and I'm not specifically talking about Tesla. I'm just basically talking about any brand of electric vehicle. I want to talk to you specifically about pure electric vehicles. I'm not going to talk to you about hybrids. The only way that you can power an electric car is by charging the battery, and there is no fuel option. First thing I want to say is you got to think about the cost. Everybody's different. Your budget is different to mine, and it's also different to the next door neighbors. So you've got to firstly decide whether you have the budget to purchase an electric vehicle. A lot of people use the reason for not buying an electric vehicle being that it is so much more expensive than a ICE, which is an internal combustion engine car, which is just your normal everyday car that runs on petrol or gas or fuel, whatever you like to call it. In a way, that is kind of an unreasonable comparison, because people are saying like, I'm not getting an electric car because it's so much more expensive. But what they're doing is they're comparing, for example, owning a Tesla Model 3 to that of owning a Toyota Corolla, and it doesn't work like that. It's not a fair comparison, and what you need to do is to try and compare like to like. So apples to apples, not apples to oranges. From my point of view, like if you're thinking of getting a Tesla Model 3, you've got to compare it with how much would it cost to get a car that is petrol, but is of the equivalent kind of standard, the equivalent kind of performance to that of a Model 3. And I'm thinking stuff like BMWs and Audis and stuff like that. And when it comes down to it, the price difference between the two cars probably ain't going to be a lot different. An Audi or a BMW is going to cost at least $50, $60, if not more $1,000. And that's roughly how much it's going to cost you to purchase a Tesla. So number one, if you're comparing like to like, I think that there's not a lot of difference in price between a similar level of performance. So that's number one. Number two is the convenience. Now there's two things I want to say when it comes to the convenience of having an electric car. And the number one thing that I want to say is charging. It'll vary from place to place, city to city, country to country. The things that I've discovered in my year of owning a Tesla is the following. I would definitely not buy an electric car if I didn't have the means to conveniently charge it from my home. Now, I don't have all the bells and whistles. I don't have fast chargers and stuff like that. Basically, I just have an extension cord that I plug into an outdoor power point, and I charge my car as it's parked on my driveway. Yes, it's not the most convenient way. It doesn't charge your car anywhere near as quickly as, for example, if you took it to a supercharger. But for a daily commute, I charge it maybe once every 2 days, and I probably use up maybe 30% of the battery in the interims. I have no problems. I just plug it in overnight and it's charged up to 90%, which is where you want my battery to be, not at 100% for this particular car. And I have absolutely no issues. It doesn't matter if it rains, it doesn't matter if it's hot, it doesn't matter. I just charge my car in the driveway overnight. A lot of people don't have that ability to do that, and they could be, for example, that your car, you do not have enough street parking, and then you have to park your car on the street, and there is no means of actually plugging your car in. And then there are people who live in apartments, and a lot of people are under the misconception that as long as you have a parking space in your apartment, like for example, you've got an underground garage and you've got a designated parking spot, then it's a no-brainer. So it's just as easy to charge your car. And that is not so. I don't know how it works in different parts of the world. In most places here in Sydney, most of your parking spaces in underground car park don't have a power point to start with. And two is the way that the whole electricity billing thing works. Like in a common area like a parking garage, you don't have individual metering. I don't know how impressed the body corporate is, and I don't know whether it's going to be permissible for you to be plugging your car into a shared communal power point and just continually charging your car from there, and everyone else in the block of units ends up having to pay for it as well. So I check on that. That could be a major deal breaker if you are not allowed to charge your car in your own parking spot in your apartment. There are arguments that, yeah, even if I do that, it's not such a hassle. I could just go to a nearby supercharger and charge my car, especially if I don't use it that much. I can maybe just go once or twice a week and take it to one of the superchargers. And the thing about that is, Sydney is not like LA. Especially in the major metropolitan area of Sydney, there aren't that many superchargers. There's one at Macquarie, there's one at Broadway, there's one out down in Sutherland, there's one out at Campbelltown, but it's not like every suburb or every couple of suburbs has its own supercharger. Yes, a lot of the shopping malls have a charger, but there's usually only one, and it's usually super slow, and they're not designed, and I'm talking about the non-Tesla ones, the ones that are either free or charge you a little bit, like the council ones. They're not designed for you to charge your car from 10% to 90% because it's going to take you numerous hours and you're not going to be able to park there for so long. They're designed for you just to top up your car whilst you do a little bit of grocery shopping, but it's not a means to be able to charge your car fully like you would do if you plugged your car in overnight, and they don't charge fast. Also remember that if you charge your car in a commercial charger, whether it be at a shopping mall, a non-Tesla one, a Tesla one, or whatever, the charging costs are significantly more expensive than if you just plug the car in at home. That's another thing that you should consider before you purchase a car. And also remember that at this point, Tesla superchargers are not generally open to non-Tesla cars. There's, I think, 4 in New South Wales that allow non-Tesla cars to plug in. Otherwise, you're going to have to go for the ChargeVox or the NRMA chargers. They could be far from your place. They could be super busy. And one of the things that are much worse when you drive an electric car compared to a petrol car is that because it takes, say, on average 20 to 30 minutes to charge your car, if there's a big queue, you're going to be waiting a long time. So that's something you want to consider when you have an EV. It's fine for a daily commute, but if you need to charge your car on a regular basis, and I find that these days that because there's so much demand for chargers, because there are a lot of people who live in units who don't have the capacity or the ability to charge their car at home, they tend to take it to the superchargers in the mall, and those superchargers are invariably busy. Another thing is that people are using these superchargers to avoid having to look for parking spots. If you have a car that's, say, charged at 60% and you need to go to a mall, you stick it into a supercharger, because theoretically only electric cars can go into superchargers. You plug it in and you can do your shopping. You don't have to fight for a general parking spot. So that's become a ploy in Sydney during the busy times, and that's annoying as well. So if you're just there to try and charge your car and not do any shopping, and all the charging spots are taken up by people who are shopping, that's going to be a nuisance. So have a think about that. The other thing that I suggest you have a think about before you buy the car is, where are you going to drive the car? Within the metropolitan, especially if you're home charging, it is a no-brainer. You just do it as a regular thing and there's no issues whatsoever. But if you do a lot of regional travel, you've just got to make sure that the places you go have enough of an infrastructure for charging that it's going to make it something that's not going to be completely punishing and annoying if you're doing it on a regular basis. Yes, it's fine to be using a supercharger once in a blue moon if you go on a holiday, and it's a little bit annoying to have to wait, but if you have to do that every single week, it's going to get pretty annoying pretty fast. So that's something to think about. If you do a lot of regional travel where there are not a lot of availability of chargers, that's something you may want to consider as well. The last point on this particular subject in terms of the ease of use is the availability of Wi-Fi. To update your car, you need to connect it to a Wi-Fi. With a Tesla, I get probably an update every 2 weeks or so. Where my car is parked, I don't actually have it close enough to my home that I can actually connect to the home Wi-Fi. So I actually hotspot it to my phone and I do the updates from there. But the problem with that is that you actually have to sit in the car while you update. And it takes maybe 20 minutes to download the data for the update. So you actually have to physically sit in the car because you have to have the car in range of the hotspot. So you can't go back in the house and leave the phone in the car because the phone acts as a key. So it's all a bit complicated. If you don't have access to Wi-Fi, that's another thing to consider. If you are off street and you're not close to your apartment, that's something to consider. If you're in a parking garage, even if you're allowed to charge your car in the parking garage, you may not get any reception down there and you may not be able to get access to a Wi-Fi to update your car. So that is a little bit of a nuisance too. That's something that you need to bear in mind when you think about getting an electric vehicle. I don't want to be long-winded. I don't want to keep talking about this anymore, but the last thing I want to talk to you about is durability. With an electric car, you don't have to service it as much, which is great. But my concern is, if you are someone who likes to purchase a car and hang on to it for a long time, I don't know what's going to happen in terms of battery life and the maximum battery capacity. For example, if you have an iPhone, 2 years later, it doesn't charge up to 100% anymore, even though the gauge says 100%, but the actual maximum capacity of your phone probably drops to about 90. If you've got an electric car and you're accustomed to saying get 400 kilometers out of it, and you do a commute, for example, once a week where you travel, say, 380 kilometers and you can easily make it, after 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, I'm a bit doubtful that you're going to make it. As the total battery capacity drops and you lose, say, 10 or 20% of your total charge, the 400 kilometer range becomes 320 if you lose 20%. That's going to be something that a lot of people haven't considered or need to think about when you get electric cars, is if you're going to hold on to them for a long time, and there are plenty of people who have been known to hold on to their cars for 7, 8, 9, 10 years, battery capacity may become an issue. It's not like a camera where you can just take the battery out and swap in a new one. If you have to replace a battery in an electric car, I'm guessing it's like 10 grand, and I don't know how long it's going to take to do that. So that's something to consider. If you're only own cars for short term, for example, if you have a lease where it's only for 3 or 4 years and you have to give them back, then it's not so much of an issue. But if you're someone who's going to buy an electric car and keep it for ages, that might be an issue, especially if you get cars with a shorter range. This Tesla apparently has a range of like 600 kilometers. You're never going to get 600 kilometers, right? Even in the best driving conditions, you're going to need to turn all the air off. You're going to have only you in the car, nothing else playing. You've got no luggage, no extra weight, your tires properly pumped and all that stuff, and maybe you'll get 470. If you've got a car which range is only 400 to start with, that's going to be a bigger issue once the battery capacity starts going down as the battery starts getting older. I hope you guys found this useful if you're in the market of getting any sort of electric vehicle, and these are some of the things that I would definitely think about before I made the big splurge and buy an EV. Now, having said that, I love my car. The performance is amazing. It's faster than any car I've ever driven, and you can actually take most cars off a traffic light and actually leave them in your dust. And there's a lot of technology here. There's a lot of stuff that is good about this car. It's environmentally friendly. It can be cheaper to run than a fuel car. They're expensive to start off with, but they're great cars. There are a number of caveats that you need to consider in your own personal circumstance and decide whether this car is suitable for your needs and whether it's going to be easy to keep it maintained, to keep it charged, to keep it updated, given your location and your ability to charge it and get access to Wi-Fi. That's it from me. I'll catch you next time in a video. Remember to like and subscribe. Have a great day.